Hello everyone, welcome to this webinar today where we're going to be looking at grants. Grants are a big issue for small businesses and medium-sized enterprises. They're very popular. There's hundreds of grants in Australia that are delivered by the Australian, state and territory governments, and some local governments also supply grants to encourage businesses to commence operations in their council locations. I speak to a lot of SMEs in my consulting role, and one of the biggest complaints I get from them is if they've noticed that one of their competitors, or they've read in the newspaper or on social media that one of their competitors has obtained a government grant and they have never been told that that grant exists. They ask me, why hasn't their accountant kept them informed? So this is a big issue for accountants, to keep your clients informed about the grants that could be applicable to them. Not all of them, there's hundreds of them, but the half a dozen, maybe 10 grants that particularly apply to them. So you need to be seen if you're an accountant, a business advisor, a bookkeeper, or a chief financial officer supplying services to SMEs, that you are aware of the grants and you are proactively keeping your clients informed. If during today's webinar you have any questions, please type them in the chat and I will refer to them later in the webinar. If you're viewing from our Facebook live feed, welcome. Unfortunately, you cannot type in your question. So if you do have questions, please send me an email. And if you're watching this recording at a later time that suits you, also please send me an email on any questions. The emails, please send them to peter@essbiztools.com.au. There's a wide variety of grants on offer in Australia, and the ones that I'm summarising here for you are from the Australian government grant list. There's also a wide variety of grants being offered by the states and territories in Australia. Export Market Development Grant. It's been with us since 1997 as a grant to encourage smaller businesses. Not necessarily companies, any type of entity can apply. But there's a new grant that started from 1 July 2021. But the initial applications for it close on the 30th of November. And it has changed the whole concept of this grant, which previously had been that you spent the money, then you applied to Austrade to see whether they would approve it and give you a payment. That's all now changed. You apply in advance and Austrade will consider your application and will then enter into an agreement with you and will make progressive payments to you based on the estimates that you've included within your application. So that's new. It closes on the 30th of November. So if you're an accountant and you've got clients who are exporting or proposing to export, I'd suggest you have a good look at this. The Research and Development Tax Incentive Rebate is a fantastic system to help people who are undertaking some research and then they want to develop it. It gets them started. There is a process, like everything in life, there's rules and there's processes. And within ESS BIZTOOLS, we have a full system on research and development, if you're interested, because you've got clients who are undertaking. And I think in the aftermath of the COVID-19 lockdowns, we're all going to find that a lot more people have been doing research and development than normally. Normally, there's around 14 to 16,000 companies. You've got to be a company to get the R&D tax incentive rebate that do apply. I think that figure could be up around 20,000 this year. So that's a lot of companies. The vast majority of those entities are SMEs. So if you're an accountant, some of these people may well be your own clients. Have they come and talked to you about this? Unfortunately, some of them won't because they don't think you're interested in supplying these types of services. Now, R&D is all driven through the Tax Act, so it should be something that you're involved in, I think, and it will help your clients because you might then get on an interesting journey where the client started with research and development, then they move into the next one, the Accelerating Commercialization Grant, because that grant requires the company to have undertaken R&D. Now, the original application can be made by someone that's not a company, but if they're going to receive a grant, they've got to be incorporated as a company. The grant is up to $1 million on a 50-50 basis, and they've got 2 years to implement the work. So it's an interesting grant. But we've also got all of these other grants, apprenticeship grants to encourage businesses, your clients, to employ apprentices, disaster recovery grants. Unfortunately, we have disasters every year in Australia. We've probably got a few unfolding at present, haven't we, with floods? And unfortunately, there's undoubtedly going to be bushfires again, and so it goes on. We've got employment grants. We've got Trade Start, which is assistance to help people start this journey into exporting. There are some special grants for women, and I've listed one of them, the Women in STEM and Entrepreneurship. STEM is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. There's a great push from the federal government and some of the universities in that area to encourage girls to be interested in these subjects. Medical practitioners grants, there's a number of those. They're primarily targeted at medical services being decentralized, encouraging people, specialists in the main, in the CBDs of big cities to move to the outer suburbs, encouraging specialists and GPs to move to country and regional areas. Business growth grants, a very popular one. It's basically targeted at tradie type businesses. They can get a grant of up to 20,000 on a 50-50 basis. And there's anything can be done under it that will help improve their business. A lot of the work accountants can do. Business plans, budgets and cash flow forecasts, management reviews, corporate governance mentoring, leadership team development are all sort of activities that I've conducted under that grant for clients. Screen Australia, there's a lot of money being applied in Australia by the governments, both state and federal, to help the development of a film industry in Australia, or the ongoing development, as I should say it. And obviously we produce some very great films. There's a number of grants for Indigenous organisations to help them in their uptake of business matters. The SME Recovery Loan Scheme is still in operation. There were some changes made a couple of months ago. It operates through until the 31st of December this year. So if you've got clients, it's a good idea to get the applications in now. The Northern Australia Business Development Grant is for the area that's deemed to be Northern Australia, and that's from around Gladstone North. But it's the whole of the Northern Territory, and it runs across into Western Australia. And defence industry contractors, there's grants in the system now to encourage tradies, contractors, professionals who are interested in supplying services to the defence industry to undertake some skills development, to have a better appreciation of how defence work is carried out, and to improve their skills. This is a great initiative, and it's been funded by the Defence Department. So that's a quick overview of some of the grants that are there. Now I want to talk to you now. I've called this slide Grant Headquarters, because as far as I know, we're the only ones really supplying this service to accountants in Australia. So we're quite proud of it. Within ESS BIZTOOLS, we've got papers on individual government grants, both Australian and then a separate section of our website for each of the states and territories. Our subscribers can access that material, download it, badge the paper, and send it to their clients or prospects to give them an awareness of what the grant's about. Now, that process doesn't do the sorting to determine whether the client might be eligible for that grant. That's carried out within ESS BIZGRANTS, which is a standalone website that we developed some years ago. Our subscribers to ESS BIZGRANTS are able to answer some client profile questions. Takes about 3 minutes, that's all. And you only really have to do it once. You insert the business industry code. That's the code that you place on the tax return, but please make sure it's up to date. I have found that the business industry code that's been shown for years on the tax return doesn't reflect what the business is now doing. So you might need to have a look at the business industry codes to make sure that what you have got is correct for what the business is currently doing. The system will then search grants once you ask it to do that, and it will then produce an initial list of pending grants. These are grants that this client might be eligible for, might. There are some supplementary questions then to be answered on any of the grants that are shown as pending that you want to get some more information on. Now, after you've answered those questions on the pending, the system will sort them either as being potentially eligible or potentially ineligible. Now, when you get something that's ineligible, you can have another look at it. And if you think, oh, I might have answered some of those questions incorrectly, you can go back and redo it. Just click back on it and start again. So it will be telling you whether the system believes that you could be eligible for those grants. The system will then prepare a grant report, which has got your client's name on it, your firm name on it, and gives a brief synopsis of what the grant's about and shows the amount of money. The system will produce an article that we have written on that individual grant that you can send the client as well. So you are then in a position to sit down in a very proactive manner and say to your client, look, we've had a look at the grants that might be available for you, and we've produced this report, and here's some additional information. Are you interested? In my experience, 95% of clients are interested. They want to know more. You can say to the client, we can go away and think about it. You've got some articles to read on the grants. That's probably not a bad idea if there's a fair number of them produced. And what you can then say to the client, well, we can now help you, first of all, in the grant application process, because that's what's got to be done. Most of the grants are now being processed online, so you can work with the client to do that and charge them a fee, of course. And then there's the opportunity that for some of the grants, your accounting firm can do the work. And in my experience, it ends up at about 35 to 40% of the work can get done by accountants who are prepared to undertake business advisory services. What's the work? Well, it's the business plan, budgets, cash flow forecasts. It's corporate governance issues. It's leadership, training and mentoring. It's organizing meetings. It's mentoring a leadership team to improve their skills, their use of key performance indicators, undertaking a full review of the business, what improvements and changes can be made. There's a whole range of issues. There's project management, especially on the Accelerating Commercialization grant. That's a big grant, and the government requires quarterly reports. Some clients don't like doing them. So I've done a number of those where I've been the project manager in effect over a 2-year period, making sure the reports are prepared, because until the reports are prepared, your client will not get their next tranche of money, because the Accelerating Commercialization grant pays money out in advance. The government does retain 15% to make sure the final reports are submitted, but there is an ongoing cash flow coming from the government. But the only way you can trigger that is to make sure the reports for the previous quarter are submitted. And that could open the opportunity for you to do that if the client doesn't really like that idea. It's a little bit complicated. There's a big cash flow forecast to be analysed every quarter. It's great work that someone in your office can be doing on behalf of the client. So that's basically the way that this system operates, where we're going to take you now to our website to show you where these types of products are able to be found, so that you're in a position to be able to deliver these types of services to your clients. So the first one I'm going to go to is the ESS BIZGRANTS, which is now on your screen. This is the separate website which we have created for ESS BIZGRANTS. So we'll log in. There are separate login details. I'd already done that before we started. And there's some explanation shown of various aspects of the terminology that we've used within this program, which you can view at your leisure. We'll go into client profiles, and I'm going to show you a profile. These are our workarounds that we've been working on, and I'm just going through all these, looking for one that I can show you. So trial business enterprise, and I'm going to edit it. So I'm going to go back to the beginning so you can see the whole thing. So this is the client profile. You can enter the client's name, or you can put a reference number if you wish. You need to identify the type of entity that applies. There's a wide range we've got there. There's no doubt that companies are the most popular entity for government grants from the government bureaucracy point of view, but others can apply. We want to know whether the business exports or does it import. We've answered yes to both of those. The number of employees is important. And what we have here is 0 to 20, 20 to 200, and 200 plus. They're the bands of employee numbers that are basically being used in the various grants. So we've said this hypothetical business we're talking about here has about 8 or 9 employees. So it's in the 0 to 20. Do they have an ABN? Yes. You'll not be able to secure government grants unless the applicant has an ABN. So if you're doing this process before someone's really started in business, but you've got a good idea what they're going to be like, you can tick yes to that. But just make sure they get an ABN before they go ahead and start making applications for any grants, because otherwise they'll get knocked back. The years operating is important. So we've got 0 to 2, 2 to 3, and over 3 years. You select which one. You know, 10 years ago, there were a lot of grants for startup businesses, but over the years that has changed. A lot of the government agencies are now looking for people to have got through that baptism of fire. So they're looking for people that have been in business for more than 2 or 3 years, because the government department's got a bit sick of funding startups, funding new business operators who then got into financial difficulties, and they don't see it as their role. So we've said here, this business has been going for 5 years, so obviously it's over 3 years. You then need to select the turnover, because a lot of grants have got turnover requirements within them. Now, the turnover limit we chose for this business is $1.5 to $20 million. We reckon they had a turnover of about 3 million. And so that's in that category of 1.5 to 20 million. And we've listed these turnover limits where things change in various grants that the government has made available. Are they registered for GST? They need to be registered for GST. So again, if it's someone that's wanting to know what grants might be available for when they start a business, you can answer that. It's not going to anyone else other than you and your client, but just make sure they are registered if you roll up and want to make a government grant. Are you tax exempt? The answer is no. There are now some grants from states and territories and the federal government that will allow tax exempt organisations to apply for what might be called business grants. That didn't used to be the case, but now it is. So you might have some where if you answer yes to that, some of the grants will still be shown. And we've asked, does the business do some research and development? And that's not asking them, are they claiming the research and development tax rebate? It's just trying to get a feel, because our back end of the system, if you answer yes, like we have here, is going to steer the response to be looking at people who might not yet be claiming the research and development incentive rebate, but perhaps should be looking at it, or some other areas that relate to research and development. Now, if you hit that, the red side there, you'll delete everything we've got in the system. We don't want to do that. Hit save, and then we'll move on to a summary. So there's the summary. We've got that this is a client we've called Trial Business Enterprises. They're a company. They export, they import. They're in the 0 to 20 employee band. They do have an ABN. They've been in business for over 3 years, and they're involved in some R&D. So we're happy on that? I think we are. So we can now move on and look for searching the grants. My apologies, I forgot a step then. So we've done all that, and we now have to go to business industry codes. Very, very important step, my apologies. You then need to enter the business industry code. Now, this business is a fabricator of metal products, and we've identified some of the industry codes that apply. So you can have as many as you like. One of our subscribers proudly sent me a copy of this report once, where he had about 25 different codes that he put in. I think he was just having a bit of a fun to see how many he could put in. Well, I think you could put the whole lot in if you wanted. You'd get a very long summary. This goes back to the ATOs. So we're using the ATOs business industry codes, not the Australian Bureau of Statistics. The ATO codes are based on the Australian Bureau of Statistics, but I find the ATO codes are more up to date because they're responding to new business formations, categories, as tax returns are lodged, and there's people making inquiries. Whereas the Bureau of Statistics has only really been updated after every census, which is once every 6 years. So we've gone through here and identified the codes, and there's provision there. You can do some searching. So we've done all that now. We can hit search grants. Now, in actual practice, this whole process up until about here might have taken you 3 or 4 minutes, and you don't have to keep on repeating it. You can rely on the information being the same each year. Now, in the pending grants, now this is a trial site that we've been using a bit. It suits running webinars like this. We've got 49 grants that are potentially eligible, but in the potentially ineligible, we've got, potentially eligible, we've got 9. So we've already gone through and looked at them. And in the potentially ineligible, we had the Biofutures Industry Fund. Okay, let's go back to pending. And I'm just going to pick one This was a Queensland business. I should have told you that at the beginning, but I forgot about that. And so I'll try to find something that's more Australian, so we can just work our way through what's going on. Okay, so this business said it was exporting. So we'll have a look at the Export Finance Insurance Corporation. Now, the process I'm going to show you now is repeated for every grant in the system. So in every grant, you will get this document that has now come up on the screen, which is giving us the grant description. So the Export Finance Insurance Corporation's been around for a long time, over 50 years. I can remember dealing with them many years ago when I was the Chief Financial Officer and Company Secretary of a listed public company. We were a major Australian meat exporter. We had a lot of dealings with Export Finance Insurance Corporation because in those days, their key word was insurance. So we used to insure products with them. Thank goodness we had done so on a couple of occasions, because you can get into problems sending product overseas, especially something as negotiable as meat products. So there's a summary there, very brief summary as to what this grant's about. If you want to know their funding, well, they don't actually do funding, they supply documentary credit. But if they did supply funding, there'd be a brief synopsis of it. And what we then want to answer is, do they want to see something more about what this grant's about? We say that's wonderful. You can click on to the paper and just excuse me. You can click on and read that paper if you wish to get an idea of what the Export Finance Insurance Corporation, commonly known as EFIC, role is these days. So they supply facilities for small business built around basically offering guarantees to trading banks. So the trading banks go ahead and issue the loan or the facility, but they get a support documentation from EFIC, which is in other words is saying the Australian government. So it's a great system, especially for small exporters and getting started. So there's a great summary there that you can go through and read and say, okay, well, that's what we want to do. That gives us a good idea of what that grant's about, so that we can move on. And I clicked on the wrong thing then. So just bear with me a little bit, thanks, and I'll just try to get that back. So there's the Export Finance Insurance Corporation, and we're going now back to where we were. My apologies. There's some additional criteria. There's none in this particular grant. In some there will be. Now we could hit apply now and that would take us to EFIC's website. But if we close it, it will now tell us that whether we're going to be eligible for that grant. And that hasn't actually asked us to supply the information. So I probably picked the one that's not a normal grant to submit on. We're not going to apply now, so we will just move on and find out something else. So as we're in the Export Market Development Grant, we might just go in and look at the grant, the Export Market Development Grant I mentioned before, closes soon. I just want to show you how this process works. In the application toolkit, you have links to articles which you can read. So on this one, so this is the application for Export Market Development Grant in respect of the 2020-21 year. This is the last year of those types of returns, because Anyone lodging that return has already spent the money. Now they're going to try and get Austrade to give them 50% of it back. The additional, so this is a sample of the additional criteria which we can have. Have you spent money to seek out, create, demand, or develop an export market? And we say yes. If you are claiming overseas representation, have you maintained documentary evidence? Very important. We say yes, we've done that. If you're claiming expenses under marketing visits, have you maintained full records? You're going to keep full records, diaries, what they did every day. We say yes. If you claim 2 export market development grants in prior, have you discussed with Austrade? So you need to do that. And is the business the principal? The people claiming the export market development grant must be the principal in the export transaction, not an agent, not a distributor. So we say yes. Now, in that case, yes was the correct answer to 5 questions. In some instances, you'll find that no's the correct answer. So don't assume it's going to always be yes. And what popped up then when I answered that last one was apply now. Now, if we click onto there, that's going to take us to Austrade's website where we can look at making an application. I don't want to do that. I want to show you how our system works. I'm going to hit close. And what it is now done, we're updating. And the export market development grant, the one for this new year is there. That's the one that closes on the 30th of November. But if we go back and go into potentially eligible now. And there's the export market development. No, it's not. I never pressed that hard enough. Here's the export market development grant here. So there's that one we just looked at. So that's how the system works. You answer the additional criteria. If you get it correctly, it will take you into the potentially eligible area. If you answer it incorrectly, it will take you into the potentially ineligible. Okay, so we're going back to the potentially eligible area. We've got a number of grants that are shown here, the Accelerating Commercialization grant that I mentioned in the introduction period. Back to Work, Centre for Defence Industry Capability. We had defence industry grants mentioned in the preamble at the beginning and some of the others. And we've now got the Export Market Development Grant. So we now want to send a report to our clients. So we hit print report. And the system's gone through and got the client's name, Trial Business Enterprises. It's prepared by ESS BIZTOOLS. That's because I'm preparing it. But if you prepared it, it'll have Bill Jones and Co, Chartered Accountants. And it dates at today's date. There's only 12 days to get those applications in on the Export Market Development Grant. And that's for the old grant as well, the one that finished at June 21, and the new one that's applying to this new financial year we're now in, 21-22. What we're getting for the client, though, is a brief synopsis of what the various grants are about. There's some fine print there, basically saying, don't go off and start thinking you've got this grant. You've now got to go through the application process. This is only the first hurdle. This is trying to identify for your clients what grants they may be eligible to apply for, but they've still got to go through the application process. Does that help you? I think it does. I think grants are a great opportunity for accountants to be having ongoing communication with clients, finding some additional interesting work, helping your clients upskill their business and their team with new knowledge, new systems, with government assistance. Government's paying at least 50%. There are a few instances where the government will pay more than 50%, but most of them are 50%, but it's a great start. And it's a great way for you and your team and your accounting, bookkeeping, business advisory, or chief financial officer services firm to undertake some very interesting work for your clients. You will have to submit a proposal and a quotation. And in some of the grants, the government officials insist on a second quote being obtained, but they do have a preference for having the linkage between the client and their normal professional advisor. So as long as your expense estimate is not outlandish compared to the other, and as long as your client tells the government that they want to go with their incumbent accountant to get this done, in most cases that will occur. Bearing in mind, your client is paying at least 50% of the costs. So that's how the government grant system is working. I'm just going to check to see whether we've got any questions. We've got no questions. So if you want to, you can send me some questions if you're watching this later on or on the live feed to Facebook, and we can get back to you. So I'm just going to go back to our screen share, and we're going to carry on from there. We are running a tools to create opportunity promotion at present. You can get 7 great products for an investment of $795. That's 12 months access, and that figure includes GST. And you get 24/7 access. You've got a username and a password. So if you want to come on and do your work at 3 a.m., you can do it to your heart's content. It's a great way to introduce a range of diversified services to your firm. The Accounting Market Pulse report released in May this year, produced by the CommBank, indicated that on their survey of accountancy firms all over Australia, small, medium, large, doesn't include the big 4, they ascertained that 95% of the firms that they interviewed were going to implement diversified services strategies over the next 2 years. So a lot of your competitors are going to be doing this. I think you should seriously look at it also, especially with the pressures on the taxation market. So the 7 great products include 4 products that are mandatory, because we want our new subscribers to get the key areas fixed right from the beginning. So we've got a business advisory services newsletter, which is a marketing tool for you, but a mentoring document for your clients. We got the Business Plus newsletter. That's what I was just referring to. The business advisory services training is 13 modules to help train your team. You get access to 343 papers that we've written under 60 categories that you can badge and send to your clients. You can charge for them if you want to also. And the Sme Needs Analysis, a very important document. In fact, we think our most important, which gives you some matters to discuss with your clients, gives you some points to bring up with them, to have a cup of coffee, to just talk and ascertain what's worrying them in their business. And by you raising these issues with them, we find that cements this relationship with your client, that you can really attend to this broader area called business advisory services, rather than just the very narrow area of annual accounts and tax returns. You've then got the choice of picking 3 additional papers out of 22, and we've listed them here. There's 5 within the business health checks. That's a step further than just benchmarking, because it's giving you a process for key performance indicators within your client's business. We've got that in 5 industries. We will be expanding that further in the next calendar year. But then we've got a whole range of other products that you can look at. Business planning, the tradies charge out rate calculator, which is very popular because every small, medium-sized accountancy firm's got tradies as clients. How many of them have got a proper business-like process, a mathematical process to setting their charge out rates. Same applies for professional firms, and it's slightly different for retailers and wholesalers, but we've got a stock mix pricing calculator, which is very impressive to see in operations. Buying a business, client mentoring and coaching. This is some material you can send to your clients so they get a better appreciation of what you can do. Seminars and webinars, a great communication device. Crowdsource funding, equity raising. Clients can raise $5 million in 12 months, quite legally, and they can promote it or can be promoted and advertised. There's a process, of course. Debtors management. We got the longest debtors days outstanding in the world. Early stage innovation company. Government grants. We've just given you an intro to them today. I hope you've got an appetite for looking more closely at grants. Leadership modules. Personal property securities register. I don't like the legislation, but it's very important that every accountant understands how it operates so that you can be alerting your clients to the dangers of not registering. $450 million has been lost by Australian businesses primarily through ignorance of this legislation. $65 million of that was lost by a subsidiary of a top 100 international corporate group. So if they get it wrong, what chance has SME business operators got? Think about it. I would hate to be sitting here on a Monday morning and someone walked into my office, and they mightn't just walk in, they might barge in and say, I've just lost $500,000 because some of my plant was stored at someone else's premises and they've had a liquidator appointed and the liquidator seized it over the weekend. What are you going to say to your client? I hope you'd already had a discussion with him and for some reason the client had rejected your advice. But make sure if that happens, you've sent a letter to your client confirming the advice and noting that they have instructed you not to do anything, because it would not be a very nice position otherwise. Selling a business, debtor systems, succession planning, survival in difficult times. So you pick 3 of those, you get the other 4. If you want to upgrade to anything else, you say, oh, I'd like a couple more of those, that's all right. We'll negotiate a fee for you for that. But $795, including GST, for 12 months. You know, that's less than, probably only 40% of a 6-minute unit cost that most partners in firms are charging. You should be able to recover that in no time at all. So if you want more information or you'd like to subscribe, please send us an email, Peter@ESS BIZTOOLS. We'll send you the product package brochure and the subscription form that you can complete and send back to us. If you're interested in finding out more about this package, we're continuing for the next few weeks. Next week, we got survival in difficult times on Tuesday. And on Thursday, we got the retail wholesale stock mix pricing calculator. You'll be very impressed with that, I think. And then on Tuesday, the 30th of November, we got the business health check for pharmacies. So you can see how that works. And we got client coaching and mentoring on Thursday, the 2nd of December. To register for any of these webinars, please go to our website, www.essbiztools.com.au. Scroll down till you come to register for upcoming webinars, and just go in, find the webinar and undertake the registration process, please. If you want more details, please contact me. You can send me an email, peter@essbiztools.com.au. If you want to phone me, 1-800-232-088. But if you do nothing else, we would really invite you to visit our website. That's our new upgraded website, www.essbiztools.com.au, where you'll be able to see what we think is Australia's best range of services to suit accountancy firms who wish to offer business advisory services. And we really do work with our clients to help you in that task. So thank you for joining us for this webinar, either live or you are watching this on Facebook, or you're watching this recording at a time more suitable for you. Stay safe and have a great day. Thank you. And I hope that you're having a improved conditions for your business operations now that at long last the barriers for COVID-19 are starting to be withdrawn. Thank you. Bye-bye.